Hi everyone, Mike Holmes here. This is the Know Your Reno podcast, where listeners will hear from experts from Improve Canada. Whether you're building, designing, renovating, or learning, this podcast is for you. Improve Canada is a fantastic home improvement and education center. You can speak to multiple showrooms about your project needs. Custom furniture, decor, landscaping, general contracting. Get your tiles from one showroom and your countertops from another. You can really mix and match to have the reno of your dreams. Everything you need under one roof.
Hi, my name is Olga, and I'm the host of this podcast. And today we have Heather from Leisure Pools talking to us about how to create your perfect backyard oasis.
Thank you, Olga, for having us. I am Heather from Leisure Pools, and we do make your backyard resort dreams come true.
So what do you specialize in as a company?
As a company, we specialize in pools, landscape projects, and hot tubs, really just making the entire backyard come together. So it all starts from getting a property survey and going from there.
So what would be the first step in someone, because I know we're spending a lot more time in their homes, right? People are not going on vacation. They're thinking about how to make their backyard that kind of getaway spot. What would be the first step in creating something like that?
The first step is finding your property survey, because when you start calling companies, they're going to need something to go off of. So you want to obtain that by calling your realtor or the city or getting a land surveyor if it's not obtainable otherwise. That will allow us to get a layout of the land and review a site visit and check out what you want to do with your backyard, getting your ideas and using ours.
So that's kind of the technical step, right? And then I'm assuming you're going to follow up with some sort of permits, right? Because you can't just put all these things willy-nilly and then call it a day.
That's right. So once we review your property survey and go over the city that you are in, we look at all the different permits required for what your dreams are, whether it might be a pool, a hot tub, a cabana, a new fence, a deck. Those all require different sets of permits. A pool doesn't necessarily require a permit, but a fence enclosure permit is required to protect yourself and the people around you. If you're looking for a cabana, if you're over 109 square feet, you'll need an engineered permit for that. If you have a deck and you're over 2 feet in height, you will need railings and a permit for that as well. Along with your landscaping, you can't just put as much hardscaping as you want back there. It's not your property entirely. The city still kind of owns it. So there's a 50-50 rule as to what you're allowed to actually put down and your setbacks from your fencing along with your pool.
Wow, I did not know that.
That's a lot of information just for permits. So we try not to bombard you all at once with that. At first, our first steps are to get that site survey, do a site plan with you, come up with a beautiful 3D rendering for you to review. Once you approve of what you'd like to happen, then we go to the city and ask for permission. You submit the site plan asking for what you'd like to do, whether it's a cabana, pool, and so on. And they come back with letting you know what you are allowed to do or what minor variances or revisions need to be done to complete your dream.
So after that, we have a plan in place. You mentioned a 3D rendering. So now we have a full design of what the space is going to look like. How can a client that's taking on this journey, how can they prepare themselves? Because it's not as easy as it was once.
It's definitely not. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of back and forth. So if you're working together, it's nice. To go over your plans and to talk about your products. It is still COVID. Unfortunately, product and supply is still very hard to get through and is still very high. It's not easy to obtain pools or landscaping material in any way. It is still very hard to complete the job. What you have to start with is your pool location, secure that pool so that you can dig the hole and put it in, and then work around the pool itself when you're building the cabana afterwards, or you're building the deck around a hot tub, for instance. You need to get your products first to secure your landscaping.
Is that some of the challenges that you faced? What about timelines? Are we talking about extra budgets, extra timelines?
Allocate extra budgets, because if it does take more time than expected, sometimes there are price increases that do have to be passed along to the clients. It's not an easy process to go through, and it's unfortunate because we don't know when we're going to get items. Before, you could call and say, I'd like this pool on this date. Not a problem. It's an inventory. At this time, we build to order. We do not have stock. So it is getting in line of, 1,000 people of trying to get what you want as soon as possible.
Everyone wants to just be in a pool in their backyard.
Everyone's investing into their home. I mean, Leisure Pools has never had a problem with their referrals. They have a really strong reputation. It just makes it harder for us now to complete our tasks for our clients, making them happy. It's always been a fun experience designing the backyard, but it is a very difficult experience completing the task at this time when we're trying to get them their products. You might get the pool, but you might be missing a heater or a salt system or a pump until we complete that next get you running.
Well, maybe one day. Maybe one day we'll go back to the 2019, 2018, where, you could come in, order a pool, get your backyard ready to go that season.
Yeah, it'll be great to have a stock again one day to be able to just keep pumping them out and helping everyone complete their backyard dream resorts for sure.
Absolutely. Now, I do want to get into everyone's favorite topic is how do I put together a budget? How do we do that?
So if you are budgeting to do your backyard, and even if it's a small landscape project, you want to start with adding anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000. That could take you from a vinyl pool, concrete pool, or a fiberglass pool. I mean, Leisure Pools only does fiberglass pools, so you should be budgeting around the $60,000 to $100,000 range just to get your pool in, your collar, your coping, your equipment, and go running. There's restoration that can be done as well. So that's a second phase, whether you want restoration yourself and you want to do more to your backyard, or you just want to get the pool in and let the grass grow later. It's completely up to you. But there are budgeting aspects to it, and it can become costly if you're trying to do interlocking around your pool. Some people just want to get a collar and coping done, which is around 16 to 32 inches around the pool, and that will at least get you going swimming. And that's pretty close to $100,000.
I've been trying to educate people on how to build it right, how to prioritize your renovations, and how to pick products and materials that will last. We love speaking to the Improve experts about how they are supporting the skilled trades. This is important to us, and it takes a whole community to stand behind the effort. Visit improvecanada.com to start your home improvement project the right way. Subscribe to the Know Your Reno podcast to learn more about how to renovate it right. And if you do see me at Improve Canada, please come by and say hi. Hope you enjoy the podcast and keep making it right.
So when you are planning your budget, are there things that a client needs to consider that maybe aren't as obvious as, paying for a pool or paying for hardscaping?
For sure. So every company is different and has their own pricing. You can budget for a pool price and an installation price and a crane price and a gas and electrical price. But if you need to take down a fence or a fence post, or if we need to go into the driveway, or if your driveway is heated and we need to do it from the roadway, there's different costs there that aren't factored in right away because it takes a site visit to add those in. And sometimes you still can't even tell how much more it's going to cost until you're through the process of taking a fence down and being able to put it back up, along with the crane going over the house. If an extra jib or counterweights are needed, those are small nominal fees of a couple thousand here and there that might need to be adjusted. At the same time, with your electrical or your gas, you might add a fireplace here or lighting there, which may not always be accounted for in the beginning of your budgeting, but then you get into all those extras through the process.
So it's definitely best to just keep a little bit of wiggle room, maybe start a little bit lower than you think you need. So that way you're not running into unanticipated costs that, are going to put a strain on whatever backyard oasis you're planning on creating. And that way you have to start compromising.
Yeah, start budgeting high because it is very expensive to do things these days, and it's still hard to obtain the products. So even a minimal landscape job is going to cost you $25,000 to $50,000 just for a collar coping and maybe some landscaping, like interlocking, for instance. But when it comes to your decks or your cabanas, they are a lot more technical and defined to each person. So the prices there range quite high, from anywhere from $25,000 to $60,000 or even more, depending on what you really want to do out there.
I know you specialize in fiberglass pools, but there are a few options for consumers to shop around when they are deciding what kind of pool they want. Could you talk us through a little bit about the different styles of pools that are on the market right now?
So there's 3 different products that I like to explain. That's your vinyl, your fiberglass, and your concrete. So with your vinyl pool, it's a vinyl liner, steel, and concrete. You do have to replace the liner every few years, and that process takes anywhere from 6 weeks to 2 months. For a fiberglass pool, the product is already made, so it only takes a few days to put it in and backfill it, and you're on your way. That's a lifetime warranty. There is no replacing any liners. The third product I like to talk about is a concrete pool. It's a gunite pool. When you're looking for something over 40 by 15 and a half, that's when you're going into a gunite pool. You will have to repaint it every 10 or so years, depending on how well you take care of it, and it is a lot more costly.
So what about the kind of pros or maybe instances where you would want to go with one model over the other? You mentioned that the concrete is kind of, if you're looking for a really big pool, right? that's the way you would go. But what about any other instances where you might prefer like a vinyl pool or a fiberglass pool? Any other scenarios?
So I'm not really sure why anyone would choose a vinyl pool at this point these days, other than maybe the flexibility of changing a liner and changing the color on it. That would be the only reason I see there. A fiberglass pool, because you don't have to do any of that maintenance, it is in everyone's best interest because you're saving on the budget and you don't have to replace those liners every few years. It also retains a lot of heat. So the fact with the concrete and the vinyl, they suck out a lot of heat. So it's more money to maintain heat wise. In the concrete pool, you really would just go over that. If you didn't like anything in a fiberglass mold and you really wanted to customize your pool, you would go with a concrete pool when you're trying to go over 40 by 15. Or if you want to have some kind of crazy curves that doesn't exist and you'd have to customize it to your exact liking.
So the concrete offers the most flexibility as far as going custom, right? Because I'm assuming that's when you pour it on site. You don't have to bring in a prefab mold or anything. It is going to make your experience a little bit more costly and also a little bit longer, but it's definitely an option.
For sure.
Right. And then fiberglass, I'm assuming, is what we see now as the most common pool that people are putting in.
It's getting more and more popular because it is so fast to put it in. No one wants the delays, and what might be 2 minutes or 3 days feels like a year when you're in your own house, looking at your backyard and seeing the construction zone. The hardest part to go through is the construction. It doesn't always take forever, but depending on what project you choose, it could take months, 6 months. And during the COVID times, a lot of people were just left with an empty hole. Yeah. So it was a hard process to go through for a lot of people. Vinyl used to be a product that was cost efficient. So people would go towards that because it was more cost friendly, saving anywhere from 10 to 15,000 versus a fiberglass pool. But now we are competitive, or they're higher sometimes. And what are you paying for? You're not paying for a product. You're just paying for someone to do the work.
Right.
At least with a fiberglass pool, you're paying for a product that if something happens, it can be easily repaired. It's not easy to repair a vinyl pool or a concrete pool. It takes a lot of work and it costs a lot of money.
So let's talk about the repairs, because I'm assuming a lot of maybe the durability of the pools is going to be affected by the climate you're in, right? So we're in Toronto. That's going to look a little bit different than installing a pool, let's say in California or Florida or Texas.
Or New Brunswick or Alberta or Nova Scotia. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of myths as to, for instance, fiberglass pools coming out of the ground because of the frost. That is not the case. Whether it's a vinyl, a concrete, or a fiberglass, any pool can lift out of the ground if there's water around it. So the key part is that as long as you have water in your pool and the water around your pool is lower than the water in your pool, then you're fine because you're tracking your groundwater. But for climates, either way, it's fine to build a pool. It's actually easier with a fiberglass if you're doing sand or have a lot of water. Because if you're building concrete or vinyl in an area with a lot of water around it, you constantly have to be pumping that water out. You can't pour the concrete wet. So you have to constantly keep it dry. That's, again, another great fact about fiberglass is that there's not as many weather delays. If it's raining, we can still continue to put our pools in. Otherwise, if it's concrete, you can't be pouring that day.
Yeah. So it really only comes down to physics and nature, right? There's not really one over the other when it comes to different climate ranges.
No, the climates are fine. You can put them right into the winter. You can put them right into the summers. The climate doesn't change. We actually go all year round now. We started that 2 years ago, so that's nice.
Is there a perfect season to put a pool in?
Summer's always perfect. When it's June, July, August, and it's nice and dry, that's the perfect season. It's less mess for the roads. It's less mess for your neighbors, for yourself to go through. Because when you're starting in early spring, it's wet.
Yeah.
So it does get messy. And same with later into the winter, when you're switching from fall to winter, it's hard, or the ground is soft. So you're slipping and sliding and you're making quite the mess. So the best time to do it is when it's really hot and dry, or when it's really cold and the ground is frozen.
What about planning for those? How far in advance, let's say you're putting in a pool in July, how far in advance do you need to start planning for it?
You want to start planning for your pool as soon as possible. I mean, anything's possible to make happen. But right now you should be planning a year in advance to get your pool project started. It's a lot to put together. It's a lot to go through. At the same time, I meet people and 3 weeks later they're putting their pool in if the permit process goes fine.
So definitely the main takeaway here is start planning as early as you can. start finalizing your budgets, figure out what you want, figure out what you want to spend, approach a company, maybe get a few quotes as early as a year in advance.
Yes, absolutely. Get your money in order right away, especially if you're going to start looking, because there are going to be places, if they do have something, that are going to want a deposit or full payment to hold that product if it's here for you.
So how would people, can you talk us a little bit about the process of maybe shopping around or getting a few quotes? How would you pick one contractor over the other, one company over the other?
I always highly recommend people do their due diligence. Look around, get your quotes. I don't have any problems with that. It's just a matter of the person you want to work with. It's not about the reviews. It's not about the job site pictures. Anything could happen on any site. It's really about the person you want to work with. If there's someone that you have to communicate to make your backyard dreams come true, you want to be in touch with that person. So it's really not about the company or the workmanship, because anyone could say anything or show anything. We all know how internet is. So it's just really about the person you want to work with.
What about when people are undergoing the renovation process, right? No renovation is ever going to be perfect. What are some of the things that we can maybe anticipate or plan for potentially going wrong?
There's not much you can anticipate for going wrong. Maybe if your pool shows up in the wrong color, I don't know, but
in the wrong house?
Maybe the wrong house. I mean, has that happened? Maybe. In the wrong size of pool has showed up. You just get it swapped out, no big deal. But when it comes to a fiberglass pool, if you've ordered one and it shows up, that's fine. What can go wrong when it comes to a vinyl pool, unfortunately, is the product. You dug a hole, you expected the vinyl liner to be there, you got the steel pans in, and it's not. There were a lot of calls I got during this COVID, the past 2 years, that saving a client with a hole in the ground because they just couldn't get the product. Yet the landscaper thought they had it. So that was hard for the landscapers to deal with that were doing vinyl and concrete, because they couldn't get their material.
So they just dug themselves a hole and had to
dug themselves a big hole. Yeah, basically just fill up. And then that's the hard part too. If you don't have your product right away to complete your hole, it will cave in, now costing you a lot more money to take that out, hurting the client and the landscaper. So it's nice to know if you have a product that's actually here. Right. Otherwise, don't start the product. And it's hard for a client because you can't see that. You can't see if your product's here. You have to go on the word of your landscaper. And they have the full intent of the product being here. But with the supply and demand issues, just everyone cannot control that.
Right. And I understand that, I imagine that causes so much frustration, both on the behalf of the contractor, because no one wants to tell someone and then have to retract their word or figure out a different way around it. Right. So there's frustration on both sides. So it's definitely something that people should be anticipating, maybe planning for a little bit better.
Absolutely. Trying to understand that COVID is still a very real thing. I know people don't think it is, or don't understand that there is demand issues or supply issues, but there is. And if all anyone's ever asking is a polite phone call with a polite reminder and a follow-up, everyone is still very busy. It is a lot of calls to take and deal with a lot of backlash. Unfortunately, with what used to be a exciting experience, some people are just so upset with COVID already that they come in upset, and you try and turn that around, but there's only so much you can do, and it's just, you got to work together.
So you have a vast experience in working, I'm assuming, in a ton of styles, right, with landscaping and pools. For 2022, do you see people gravitating towards maybe the same things? Are we seeing more features pop up? Are we seeing new features pop up on the market? What is that like?
Everyone's really putting their money into their houses. So before, most people just get a pool and a color and coping and call it a day. Now it is the cabanas, it is the decks, it is the hot tubs, it is the landscape lighting. It's basically building the Taj Mahal in your backyard to enjoy as long as you can. You're investing in your house, and it has added value to the property. So they are taking that into consideration.
That's actually a great point. What features are we seeing that add maybe the most value to your backyard? What should people really allocate a little bit more extra budget towards?
It's your landscaping. You've got to get that pool in, and obviously that adds value to your home by having that, depending on which product it is that is. But when you complete your landscaping and you do it to code, it does give that curb appeal basically, but to your backyard. Right. So when a client's walking back there, they're just not seeing dead grass everywhere. They're seeing a really nice landscape project that's going to make them feel at home as well, and entertaining their friends and guests.
Right. And I think that's such an important point. We're having our family over. We're not going out. We're not quite going to restaurants. We're not taking vacations. So it's probably best, to allocate a little bit more money into really creating that beautiful gathering space for your family and friends.
For sure. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm definitely going to continue to take vacations. But even that being said, investing in your backyard is still a good idea, because how often can you take a vacation? It isn't often, and you don't want to be restricted. So if you want to invest in your backyard, it's a space to do that. That way you can always be at your staycation, right?
Grab a couple of drinks, a couple of friends, and, it's like a Friday night in Bali without actually going anywhere.
Exactly. It's the Taj Mahal back there. So do what you got to do to enlighten the mood and create your own staycation.
Well, thank you so much, Heather, for being here and talking to us a little bit about the process, about the current challenges, what we can anticipate, and how to plan for all of this better.
Well, thank you for having us, Olga.
If you want to get in touch with Heather at Leisure Pools to plan your backyard oasis, we will have all the links down in the description below. You can book an appointment, come visit the showroom at Improve Canada, and talk to lovely Heather about the process of renovating your backyard. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Know Your Reno. If you would like to get in touch with today's speaker or any of our large number of showrooms at Improve Canada, please check the description for a link to book an appointment with us at Canada's largest home improvement center. Don't forget to keep in touch with us on our socials, and we will see you next week for another value-packed episode to make your next home renovation a breeze.